My wife left me for my best friend. 1 year later, she saw me with a billionaire heir. You know what your problem is, Henderson? You are so good at holding things together that nobody ever wonders what you actually feel. You are furniture. Really beautiful furniture. She said it at the kitchen island. Her coffee going cold beside her, not even looking up from her phone. No venom in her voice. That was the worst part. Venom would have meant she still cared enough to be angry. This was something flatter than anger. This was a woman who had already left the room in every way that mattered, still standing in it physically out of logistical convenience. My name is Henderson Simon. I am 38 years old, and I was standing 3 feet away from my wife, holding a wooden serving bowl I made by hand, black walnut, single piece, 11 weekends, 3 broken chisels. I had finished it the previous spring and set on the kitchen counter, because I wanted it where I could see it every morning. Tiana walked past it for 4 years without once asking me what kind of wood it was or how long it took. I don't say that with bitterness. I say it because it is the kind of detail that only becomes visible in retrospect, the way a hairline crack in a foundation doesn't register until the wall shifts. I set the bowl down carefully, the way you set something down when you have already decided, somewhere below the level of conscious thought, that you are not going to drop it. Then I got my coat, got my keys, and went to work. I didn't call anyone. I didn't send a text. I sat in my car for 90 seconds in the parking garage under our building in Bucktown and looked at the steering wheel. Then I drove. What Tiana didn't know, what she couldn't have known because I had told no one, was that 6 weeks before that morning, I had made a phone call. One call, early on a Tuesday, from a bench in Humboldt Park, because I didn't want to make it from the apartment, and I didn't want to make it from the office. The call lasted 11 minutes. The person on the other end was a woman named Cassie Pruitt, and she is the best family law attorney in the state of Illinois. And she is also the only person outside of my own chest who had been paying attention to the same things I have been paying attention to for the better part of a year. I didn't hire her that Tuesday. I just asked her a question. I said, if someone wanted to model a worst-case scenario, complete asset inventory, full financial picture, how long would that take? She said, how detailed do you want it? I said, thorough. She said, 3 weeks. I said, okay. I hung up. I sat on the bench another few minutes and watched a man throw bread to pigeons who didn't seem particularly grateful for it. By the time Tiana called me furniture, the motto had been sitting in a folder on my laptop for 4 weeks, and I had already made the second call. Please, before I continue, kindly like, share, and subscribe for more entry-setting stories. The papers arrived on a Wednesday. She left them on the kitchen island. Same surface. Same spot where she delivered her verdict. I read every page the way you read something you have already read before. Because I had. 3 months earlier, when I first felt the shape of what was coming, I asked Cassie to model a divorce scenario in complete financial detail. She did. Then I made a second call, this one to a forensic accountant in Indianapolis named Walt Gentry. Walt had been working quietly ever since. The petition listed the house, the investment accounts, the business interests, the pension. It listed everything correctly, which meant someone had given Tiana access to the full inventory, someone who knew where everything lived. I stood at that island and read all 41 pages without sitting down. Then I noticed something. The business valuation they used was from 2022, not current. Walt's number was current. Those two figures were not the same number, and the distance between them was not small. I set the papers down beside the black walnut bowl. I didn't call Cassie. I already knew what she would say. I went to my workshop and turned on the light. The first sign wasn't a text message or a caller. It was a Tuesday in November, 14 months before the papers, when I came home from a client dinner, and the kitchen smelled like Derek's brand of whiskey. Not a glass left out, not a bottle visible, just the scent of it, layered under the candle Tiana had lit afterward. I noticed the way you notice a sound that stops right before you can name it. I went to my workshop and planed a board for 40 minutes until my hands were steady. I didn't say anything. 2 weeks later, our neighbor Petra Vance mentioned over the fence on a Sunday morning that she'd seen Derek's Jeep parked on our block midweek. She said it lightly, not an accusation, Just a fact she'd noticed, the way a retired nurse notices things and files them without drama. Biscuit sat at her feet and scratched his ear. I thanked her and went inside. That same afternoon, I opened a new personal checking account at a branch I'd never used before. Not to hide anything, to separate what was mine before any of this started. I told no one, not even Cassie yet. Cassie's office was precise without being performative. No diplomas centered on the wall. One framed photograph of her mother accepting a paralegal award in 1994. She had the petition spread across her desk in 3 color-coded sections before I sat down. She didn't say, "We can beat this." She said, "They price your business interest at the 2022 valuation." Pause. Walt's number is current. That was it. She walked me through the full picture in under 45 minutes. What they filed, what they missed, what they assumed about my patients. Then she closed the folder and said, "The mistake people make against quiet men is assuming quiet is the same as unprepared." She wrote something on a notepad, tore it off, slid across the desk. I pocketed it without reading it in front of her. In the elevator going down, I unfolded it. For words. I won't say what they were yet, but I read them twice, refolded the paper, and put it back in my chest pocket against the left side. I wore that jacket to every mediation session afterward. Every single one. I saw Derek for the first time after the filing at a gas station on Diversey. He was driving my old Audi, the one I sold him 3 years ago at a deep discount because he said he was going through a rough patch. He saw me and waved. The kind of wave that takes either extraordinary confidence or extraordinary stupidity to produce. He was wearing a Loro Pianofield jacket I recognized immediately. It still had a dry cleaning tag on the sleeve, from the cleaner Tiana I used on Roscoe. I had paid for a coat there 2 Christmases ago. He pulled out of the station before I did. I watched him go. What I felt was not rage, not grief. It was something quieter, the feeling of a calculation locking into place. Walt Gentry's number rose in my mind with absolute precision. I thought, he doesn't know what Walt found. He doesn't know what Cassie is about to build. He waved at me from inside a life assembled from my leftovers, completely convinced he had won something. I pulled out of the station and drove to my workshop. I had a bowl to finish. 2 nights before mediation, I was in the workshop at 10:40 p.m., finishing the black walnut bowl. The last pass with a card scraper, working with the grain the way my father showed me when I was 11 years old in the garage in Dayton. He used to say, "The wood already knows what it wants to be. You are just removing what doesn't belong." I oiled the bowl twice and set it on the center shelf above the bench where I could see it from anywhere in the room. I did not call Cassie that night. I did not review the documents again. I went to bed at midnight and slept 7 hours. Across town, Tiana and Derek were at dinner with people who used to be our friends. She was wearing the earrings I bought her in Florence. She showed someone something on her phone and laughed. She looked comfortable. She looked like a woman who had already counted the money. She was wearing my history like an accessory and calling it a fresh start. I turned off the workshop light and went upstairs. The bowl sat on the shelf in the dark. Finished, waiting. Roland Ashworth's conference room was beige and precise. 22nd floor. For chairs each side, a clock on the wall that ran 12 seconds fast. Tiana's attorney, Jeffrey Stair, silver-haired and expensive, opened by establishing the asset total using the 2022 business valuation. He said it with a mild confidence of someone who'd been told there was no other number. Tiana sat straight. She had dressed for a room she had already won. Cassie said nothing during his opening. She wrote one thing on her legal pad and underlined it once. I watched Roland Ashworth's eyes. He had just glanced at Cassie's folder. He noted its thickness. He noted that she hadn't opened it. Cassie leaned toward me and said, barely audible, 20 minutes. I nodded. Roland looked at the clock. It was 9:48 a.m. Jeffrey was still talking, building his case on a foundation he believed was solid. Across the table, Tiana uncapped her water bottle and took a slow sip. She glanced at me once. Quickly, the way you check something you expect to find exactly where you left it. I was looking at the clock. 12 seconds fast. Still counting. Cassie opened the folder at 10:08 a.m., She removed 3 documents and placed them in a single row in front of Roland. She didn't hand copies to Jeffrey yet. She looked at Roland and said, "If the mediator is willing to review the current valuation documentation and the forensic accounting summary prepared by Walt Gentry of Gentry Financial in Indianapolis, I think this next portion will go more efficiently." Roland picked up the first page. He read the header. His expression didn't change. Jeffrey's right hand, resting flat on the table, picked up his pen and set it back down. He didn't mean to do it. It was the kind of micro-adjustment the body makes when it registers something the face isn't ready to show. Tiana was watching Roland. She couldn't read him. She glanced at me. I was looking at the clock. On the table in front of me, nothing. No documents. No notepad. Just my hands, loose and open. The way my father sat at the dinner table tonight. He didn't get the promotion he'd worked 11 years toward. He didn't say a word that night. He just sat there with his hands open. I used to think that was defeat. I know now it was something else entirely. Roland set the page down and said, in the unhurried voice of a man who had delivered worse news in smaller rooms, "The current independent valuation of the principal business asset reflects a figure 31% higher than the 2022 estimate submitted by the petitioner. Additionally, the forensic summary document a pattern of pre-filing financial transfers, 7 in total, across 14 months, moving assets from jointly held accounts into individually controlled instruments." He looked at Jeffrey. "Did your client disclose these transfers in the asset schedule?" Jeffrey said nothing for 3 full seconds. That was not a rhetorical pause. Inside my chest, something moved, not triumph, not satisfaction. It was a specific grief of being right about something you wished you were wrong about. I had run these numbers at midnight and hoped Walt had made an error. Walt does not make errors. I thought about Tiana calling me furniture. I thought about my father in Dayton. I thought, you can only remove what doesn't belong. I didn't look at Tiana, but in my peripheral vision, I saw her hand go to her collarbone, a gesture I had seen exactly twice in 9 years. It meant the floor had moved. The session broke for 30 minutes. I went to the lobby and bought a coffee from the cart near the elevators. I sat on a bench facing the door and didn't check my phone. Cassie found me 4 minutes later and sat down without preamble. She said, "Your dad was a postal worker, right?" I looked at her. She said, "My mom typed briefs for men who made partner for 22 years. She never made partner, but she made me." She sipped her coffee. "Quiet and prepared as a lineage. Henderson. It goes back." I didn't respond right away. I watched the elevator bank. Through the lobby glass, I could see the 22nd floor. Jeffrey was on his phone. His posture, not the posture of a man confirming a strategy. It was the posture of a man revising one. Tiana stood beside him with her arms crossed. Not the crossed arms of irritation. The crossed arms of someone who's just felt a draft from a door they didn't know was open. She was recalculating. I could see it from 90 feet below. I finished my coffee. Cassie stood first. I followed her back to the elevator. The clock upstairs was still running 12 seconds fast. When the session resumed, Cassie addressed Roland in the same unhurried tone she'd used in her office 2 weeks earlier. She walked through the 7 transfers one by one, dates, amounts, destination accounts. She referenced the Loro Piana Dry cleaning receipt from the joint account, charged 9 weeks before the filing during the period Jeffrey had characterized as independent financial activity. One data point among dozens, but specificity in a room like this is weight. Jeffrey's left knee was moving under the table. Roland had been watching it for 10 minutes the way a cardiologist watches a wrist. Tiana was very still. The stillness was a tell. She was holding herself together in a room she hadn't expected to find hostile, across from a man who had never raised his voice once in 9 years of marriage. Cassie closed with one sentence. "My client physician has been consistent, documented, and patient. The record will bear that out." She didn't look at Tiana. She looked at Roland. I thought about my father's hands on a piece of wood in the Dayton garage. The wood already knows what it wants to be. You are just removing what doesn't belong. I finally understood what he meant. Roland issued the recommendation 6 days later. Cassie called at 7:14 a.m. I was in the workshop. The business interest was valued at Walt's current number. The 7 transfers were treated as dissipation, credited back to the marital estate. The house went a fair appraisal. I kept the bench. I kept the tools. I kept the shelf. I took the black walnut bowl down and held it in the morning light, coming through the single window. 11 weekends, 3 broken chisels, 1 piece of wood that was already what it needed to be. I only removed what didn't belong. 3 weeks later, Elliot Ashford called to confirm a client dinner and asked how I was doing, the way he always does, actually wanting the answer. I told him the shape of it. He was quiet, then said, "I told my father about you, a man who built something real, and didn't make noise about it. My father said that exactly who he wants managing our accounts." 2 weeks after that, Tiana saw us on a Saturday afternoon in River North. I noticed her a half-second before she noticed me. I didn't stop walking. I held her gaze for exactly the length of time it takes to cross a street. Then I looked back at where I was going. She once called me furniture. Really beautiful furniture. She wasn't wrong. The kind made by hand, from a single piece, by someone who knows the material already knows what it wants to be. The kind that outlasts the room it was put in